Do you know what's actually slowing down your career as a software engineer? It's probably not the most obvious things like coding skills or how much work you actually get done. It's usually the things that you might not even notice. The habits, the choices, the quiet mindset that hold you back without you even realizing it. These are what I call silent career killers. Most engineers plateau in their career because they usually focus on the wrong things. They assume that if they just do good work over time and wait their turn, in a sense, the system will reward them. But that's not how career growth actually works in big tech. So today we'll be diving into 5 silent career killers that you should avoid. If you're new to this channel, hi friends, my name is John. I'm a staff software engineer at Meta. And over the past 10 years or so, I've been promoted about 7 times or so, including like a down level, of course. That's a story for another time. And for some relevant context for this video, I grew from a mid-level engineer to a senior in 1 year, and from a senior to a staff in just another year. And that was all at Meta. And before then, I even got promoted like twice in 1 year at like Capital One. And over the years, I have helped a bunch of my mentees get promoted. So I feel pretty confident that I know what works and what doesn't when it comes to career progression. So in this video, I want to share the biggest career killers that may quietly derail your growth. Let's get right into it. So I would say one of the most important things that you should consider when you're going for a promotion or thinking about your career growth is actually a mindset. And the number one career killer is essentially having a passive mindset. Most people already know intuitively that hard work does matter at the end of the day, but what people usually miss is that effort alone isn't really that much leverage. You can be essentially the hardest working engineers in the room and still get stuck in your career if you're not being intentional about where that effort goes or where it's pointed. In my experience, the engineers who grow fast don't just execute, they also steer their career in the right direction. Whether that is picking the right teams or right projects and making sure that their work is seen by the right people, all of these things start with the mindset shift. You need to take control of your own career. Don't wait for the system to reward you. Don't blame it when you get passed for promotions or miss an opportunity. Essentially, you want to make your own luck by designing an environment that's successful for you. Once you start thinking and changing the way you think about growth, you stop thinking that career growth is random and it starts becoming a lot more predictable. So in my opinion, the fundamental baseline for like these next things that I'm going to talk about is starting with this mindset shift of like not blaming others, taking full ownership of your career and saying that, hey, I have a say in what my career looks like and the trajectory that it's gonna go. All right, so the second biggest thing for the silent career killers is not aligning yourself with a strong leader. In my opinion, especially at big tech companies, your manager can make or break your entire career, like literally. I actually think it's probably one of the most important things. A common mistake I see engineers make all the time is that they assume most managers are like created equally. And I'll be the first one to say they're not. At places like Meta or Google, your experience can be completely different depending on who your manager is. And it's rarely about the project or the code that you're working on. It's about the people that's actually running the show behind the scenes, the leadership that you're looking up towards. So when you're choosing a manager or like reassessing your current manager, these are a few things that you should really think about. The number one thing is you shouldn't look at just that manager. You should look at their manager and then their manager as well. So a few skips above. And basically anyone that you may potentially have interactions with. Do they have a good reputation? Do they have influence in the org? Do they actually win? And this is very important because the truth is a great managers usually pull their people up with them. I always tell people that they should optimize for their crew and not like the specific code or project that they're working with. I made a whole video about this on 5 things I wish I knew when I first started programming. Go and check that out. But yeah, if you find a leadership team that is extremely strong and you trust them and they trust you, that's like a clear sign that you want to stick with them for a long time. And that's where a lot of growth will actually naturally happen. Now, once you have like this good setup, essentially you have the mindset shift, taking control of your own career. You have good leaders that you trust and you want to stick with them for a while. The next common thing that a lot of people miss that really slows down their career is not aligning your work with the business value. So this one can be pretty subtle, but this is actually the biggest gap that I see between senior engineers and staff level engineers. As essentially you level up and gain more experience, the company itself isn't really paying you just to write clean code and doing the execution, but they're actually paying you more and more for your judgment and your decision making. If you think about it, your technical skills and you being on the ground floor and knowing what's broken, what is inefficient, what is really will help you decide on projects that will really move the needle. Your job is to essentially connect these technical insights that you have within the code base, within the org structure, to business value. You essentially want to become the person that your manager and the skip manager goes to when they're trying to decide on what to prioritize next. And that's how you closely align yourself with the real business impact. Oftentimes, people kind of just do work and busy work or do this project and that project without really thinking about the value and what that project is gonna net towards. So that is a very subtle thing because you could be busy doing a ton of work, but not actually doing the right work. So a quick side tip on this is that you probably wanna go after some projects with some inherent risk. You don't wanna go for this craziest risky things unless you feel really strong about it, but you don't really end up growing if you just pick easy wins. You grow by betting on projects that could actually change something, actually have a step function change. Those projects are the things that will stretch you and maybe even scare you a little bit. But of course, those are the projects that will really grow you and usually are the ones that have the biggest impact in business alignment. Now, once you are really good at this, once you are very good at finding these kind of projects, right? You'll have so much scope naturally that you just keep creating scope. And this kind of leads to the next career killers, in my opinion. When you get here and you have a ton of scope, a common way to slow down and kill your career in a sense is to be really greedy with scope. So this is a lesson that I learned the hard way actually. Earlier in my career at Capital One, I had built this amazing project from 0 to 1 essentially. It was my baby. I did everything from the cloud infrastructure to the back end to the front end. It was a feature toggle service. But yeah, I was really greedy. I wanted all the credit to myself. But looking back, that mindset really limited my growth after a certain point. Because to really scale yourself and to really get to the next level, your job isn't to really hoard impact. It's actually to create it for others. When you invite other people into your project, mentor them, help them contribute, your influence essentially multiplies, right, throughout the org. At senior and staff levels, especially staff levels, your value essentially gets measured by not just what you can build on your own, but how much you can elevate the people around you. There's an old saying that I always think about these days when I think about this kind of scope holding is if you want to go fast, you go alone. But if you want to go far, you go together. And that's exactly how engineering careers work at the higher level. When your peers and mentors really start vouching for you, when your impact shows up in every direction, step 1 through 3 was top down, right? But now it's you're spreading across horizontally and down. And that's when your reputation becomes undeniable and your career growth just compounds, the velocity goes a lot higher. I think this is a really important piece that a lot of people miss. Now, finally, the next biggest killer, in my opinion, the thing that kills your career too often, and I think it's a kind of a controversial one, is actually job hopping too often. Some people might not want to hear this because there's this common saying of oh, you want to change your jobs, every 2 years or so, and that's how you get better pay and all this kind of stuff. And I think there are definitely a lot of short-term gains with this, but to some degree, you will hit a ceiling if you kind of do this improperly. I think the only way to do this properly is if in step number 2, your crew, your leadership decides to change to a different org or a different company and you follow along. That's not really job hopping. Oftentimes people think that changing a job or changing teams is the job changing. But to me, it's actually when you change the leadership, because the velocity that you usually build up in your career aligns with the people that you know and follow and you work well with. So if you have good leadership and they decide to go to a different company and you go with them, a lot of your velocity will be intact. All the things that I just talked about from like 1 through 4, all those tips, all of that takes a really long time to do. At least like 3 years of like building the relationships, nailing project after project, and then being very intentional with your career, and then like the conversations you have with your directors and your senior managers and your manager itself. Like all of those takes a lot of time, because deep impact just takes time. It takes trust, the relationships, and like a shared history to really execute. As soon as you change teams or change companies and leave your like circle of influence that you'll be working on, you're essentially starting from zero, and that, in my opinion, is the thing that kills your career the fastest. Like you just lose that velocity. You may not even notice it at the time. Maybe you haven't actively been taking these kind of steps, but you will notice as soon as you leave and realize that you don't have allies up or down or sideways. So if you want sustainable long-term growth, the biggest lever that you have is to find strong leadership in a crew and have all of these above steps that I talked about compound over time. And that's just like literally the fastest way to grow. So yeah, to recap, the biggest silent career killers, in my opinion, are being very passive with your career. You know, working under weak leadership, taking on low impact projects that don't align with the business values, being greedy with your scope, and job hopping too often. So yeah, these are the 5 things that I think you should really look out for. Avoid these things and you'll be ahead of like 90% of engineers that are just kind of on autopilot. Because building a great career isn't really that much about luck. Of course, there is some luck, you know, everything has luck. But I really like to think that stacking these small intentional decisions can really compound over time, over years, right? I mean, one of my favorite books, Atomic Habits, always talks about small changes make big differences in the future. But yeah, anyways, I hope this has helped you in your career a little bit. If you want to go deeper in these other topics, I did a whole video breakdown of about 5 things I wish I knew before I became a software engineer. So definitely check that one out. But otherwise, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and let me know if you want to see any other types of videos in the comments. And I'll see you on the next one. Bye.